And we are live. It's 5 o'clock on Saturday. Actually, I wasn't planning on doing another live stream until August. In case you don't know, just moved from the Sonoma wine country down to the Half Moon Bay area, which is, I don't know, 45 minutes south of San Francisco, somewhere along there. Took me a couple of weeks to get unpacked and all that, get all the whiskeys back in place. So I was planning, hey, what the heck, take a vacation in July and start up again in August. But hey, I'm all unpacked, everything's put away, so I'm ready to go. So let's get back into doing live streams. So Uncle Nate drinks whiskey. Thanks for turning in. Dave Belcher, thanks for tuning in. Donner Pass Whiskey, howdy. If you ever, Donner Pass, if you're ever in the neighborhood, you got to drop in on and say hello. And Whiskey Straight Out, all the way from Ireland. How you doing? Doing great. Absolutely fantastic. In fact, if you may recall previously when I was going live, a lot of coughing. I still have allergies, but I would say my allergies, 80-90% have cleared up since moving close to the ocean. I loved living in the wine country, but it's very agricultural, obviously, and whatever was out there, I was really, really allergic to. In fact, when I would drive back up there, go up 101, and then get off at 12 and start winding up into the hills where I was living, man, my eyes would start itching, and it would just get really, really, really bad. So in case you don't know where Half Moon Bay is south of San Francisco, and it's on the other side of the hills from the Silicon Valley. So in order to go to work, I gotta essentially go up a mountain and then come down into the Silicon Valley on Highway 92. And it's about, when you go up over that mountain, it increases in temperature 10 to 20 degrees. It's a little warmer on the other side. Allergies start kicking in. But here, the climate is actually, I've been tracking, it's very similar to that in Isla. It's about 1 or 2 degrees difference, but every morning we have fog and we get a little bit of a mist, a little bit of rain, and in the morning and the evening. The difference is it probably gets a little warmer here in the afternoon. But other than that, it very much reminds me of being back on Isla, but without the distilleries, unfortunately. Eric Anderson, thanks for tuning in. So in case you watch this on the replay, or if you didn't know, watching this live, been doing a series in which I focus on distilleries that are on a list from the Council of Whiskey Masters. And so I have an exam coming up, and it'll be on these particular distilleries. Now, the required textbook is Alan Broom's book, The Whiskey Atlas. My videos and notes are going far more into depth into what his book does. So if I can remember what it is I've even just covered in my videos, I'll be far more than just ready for the exam. This is the second level exam. The third level would be the master's level held in Scotland. They're actually holding the very first master's level exam in September this year. I got an invitation to attend if I finished up this exam for this course, but I didn't want to rush myself. I need the time to study, and I want to go over there knowing that I'm ready. So if I decide to go on with the studying and for that level, it'll be probably in 2023, but we'll see how it goes. Expensive. So we'll see how it goes. So Grumpy Old Fart, hey, thanks for tuning in. So Oban Distillery, I have 3 bottles from Oban. One is the 14-year-old, which I recently just reviewed in my recent video. This was a whiskey I first tried. A friend of mine who I dedicated that video to, who passed away from cancer, introduced this to me. I had this at his house, but it was sort of early in my whiskey career, so I really didn't have a great basis or background or in order to sort of evaluate it. But I generally took it as something that's mildly peaty and a generally good whiskey. But this was actually one of his favorites. The second one I have, this is the 2018. Excuse me. This is the 18-year-old. I just woke up from a nap, just to let you know. Like literally like 15 minutes ago, I woke up from a nap, an afternoon nap. So I'm a little out of it. This is the 18-year-old, which I like, but it's not overly impressive. It's, when you compared to a lot of other 18-year-olds in the price, particularly in the price range, it's not my favorite. If you're not familiar with Oban, and if you want to try something from Oban, my favorite, actually, the one I like the most, probably has the highest quality price ratio, is the Distiller's Edition. This is bottled at 43% alcohol by volume. This bottle I actually picked up at the distillery, but I didn't know because I didn't know it was available here in the United States. So it's the Distiller's Edition. I think it has a lot more complexity. This is the 2010, distilled in 2001, bottled in 2010. 2016. I couldn't read the fine print. So 2016 makes a lot more sense. It was bottled in 2016, since that was the year. When was I there? I was there 2018. So it's bottled in 2016. So they come out with one every year or so. Out of the three, the 14 to 18 and the Distiller's Edition, if you want to buy one just to get a representation of Oban, that's the one I would buy. By the way, for pronunciation, if you look around, it's spelled like Oban, and what I've been told is it's Oban, kind of like open a door. It's Oban. So I'll pour myself just a little bit of each. I'll do a side-by-side with each one of them. I've already said which one I like the most, but what the heck, let's do a side-by-side. You get a better judgment of a whiskey always when you're doing side-by-side, so who knows? I could be surprised. I'm going to grab another glass, a different Glencairn than that one. Ow. Just bumped into the bookcase here. And pour ourselves a little of the 14. I was going to use this. This is my favorite one that we're drinking out of. But in order to keep the comparisons the same, we'll drink this one. So if you read the comments on my video in which I reviewed the 14-year-old, the comments are exactly what I was expecting. As I said in the video, Oban is a very much sort of middle-of-the-road distillery, middle-of-the-road whiskey. When you think of peated whiskeys, you think of something big, intense. You think of Ardbeg, Laphroaig, even, say, Bowmore or Kalila, or something more coastal. You think of Lechik, right? Or even, going back to some of the Highland peated whiskeys that I reviewed during my series in which I was doing focusing on Highland peated whiskeys. You think of something a little bit more big, a little bit more intense, a little bit more in your face. These are very, very mild and very sort of in the middle of the road. It's not super light, it's not super heavy. It's sort of right in the middle. Alcohol by volume. The 14-year-old is 43%. 43%. You want to take a wild guess as to what the third one is? 43%. Donner Pass says the 18-year-old could be a U.S. exclusive. I don't know. It could be. I'd have to Google that and look it up. I don't know. It's a funny thing. I actually accidentally bought two of them. I do this sometimes. I do this with books, and I do this with whiskeys. I buy a bottle. I haven't had it yet. Haven't opened it yet. It's one of those I'll get around to it, right? Put it on the shelf. And then later on, I'm thinking, oh, I run into it again. Maybe I see it online or whatever, or I see it at a store. Oh, I want to try one of those. I buy it, forgetting I already bought one, have it on the shelf and just didn't open it. And then I come home and then, oops, I've already opened it. I didn't remember it because I haven't reviewed it yet. So I've actually got two bottles of the 18-year-old. Yeah, Belter. Yeah, accidentally. It happens. It happens. So I end up with more than one. I have um there's a Bunnahaven, the Studar, if I pronounce it correctly, the Studar, which is like a $35 bottle. It's not an expensive bottle, so it wasn't that big of a deal. I accidentally bought two of those. I ordered them. Actually, I ordered two of them at the same time from two different places. And so one arrived, and like a week later, the other one arrived. It's like, oops, accidentally ordered two of them. And that's sort of one of the more budget whiskeys. It's not bad, but it's not all that impressive. Um, I would rather accidentally buy two of the 12-year-old because that's probably one of my favorite in terms of the core range from Bunnahaven. But anyhow, so color-wise, they all look pretty much the same. Now, if you read the comments on my video, and they were totally predictable on Oban Distillery, I knew there's gonna be, yeah, that's my favorite. It's one of my go-tos. It's one I really, really, really like. I know Oban has fans, but there's also going to people that are going to go, oh, typical Diagio, low ABV because these are only 43%. We like at least a 46%, and it's not natural color, and it's probably got chill filtering in it, right? And so you always have those people who are going to make that complaint. And I agree. There's no need to put E150. I don't like chill filtering. I think you lose something in the flavor. We need to get over the fat. I'm not gonna. People keep saying this shit all the time. I don't need to keep repeating the things that we've already known and heard and said. And Ralphie and Roy and everybody else, complains about. We don't need it. And so then the conclusion we come to is these are not whiskeys that are designed for the whiskey aficionado. The whiskey aficionado. But I don't have a problem with that. I'm going to start with the 14-year-old. If I'm blind tasting or just comparing whiskeys, I like to go through them on the nose before tasting them to get a first impression. Because once you smell and taste a whiskey, the same thing with wines. Once you smell and taste that gets so embedded into your palate and your nose that when you're going to go on to the next one, it's a little more challenging to sort of forget what that one was like. And you may still be smelling and tasting a remnant of what you just had. So if I'm blind tasting or just doing a normal tasting, I do this with wines as well. So for the quartermaster sommeliers or I've done more blind tasting for WSET. I would just quick, not super intense, just go sniff, 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 just to get a first impression on the nose, so that when I go back to them as I go through them, I'm either confirming what I previously sort of set in my head as what they're like on the first impression, or see if they've opened up more during the time sitting there. But at least have a better non-masked impression of the whiskey, because that's what it does. If you've had one whiskey or wine and you go on to the next one, the previous wine or whiskey, even if you drink water, there's sort of a remnant of the previous one, unless you have like 15 minutes in between. If you take like 10, 15 minutes in between, what you previously had is sort of shadowing over. There's a remnant, you're coming in the tails or the exhaust fumes, so to speak, of the previous wine or whiskey. But when you're doing official tastings and exams or whatever, you don't have 10, 15 minutes in between. You've got basically 4 minutes per wine and going boom, 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 boom. So if you're doing, say, an advanced level sommelier or masters, you basically have 6 wines, 24 minutes to get through all of them. In WSET, you have 2 hours. I had 2 hours to go through 11 wines, so I had a lot more time. But in WSET, you're writing everything out, so you have more time because you're writing extensive notes, and you're getting a written test, not a verbal test in front of masters. Whereas sommeliers, you're doing verbal in front of somebody, at least for the advanced and master's level. Anyway, different type of exam, different type of approach to examining whiskey. So on the nose, these do really show themselves as different. The Distillers is darker, more intense. It's richer. This is fruitier. This is the 14-year-old. It's younger, but without youth notes. It's got just a minuscule, a waft of smoke and peat, but you can tell the fruit and the smoke is really well interwoven. And I think that's that's the other thing about these whiskeys is um, people, aficionados, snobs, or whatever, we may not be that big on this because they're under 46%, because non-chill filtered, natural color. They don't have the big wow factor that we typically like. But there's a whiskey or a wine for every occasion. There are some wines that are fairly neutral. There's one called a Muscadet. You take, or say, or I'm trying to think of wines that don't have a lot of oak, single grape from a mild climate. They're not big and in your face, and they're better for, say, with fish and for seafood and so forth. And so they're not wines that you would drink by themselves. They're best when you have them with something, with some sort of light food, salads, seafood, shellfish. And so you don't want a big wine that's going to overshadow the food. So they're very, very light. They're not really standalone wines. You don't hear people rave about these wines. You don't see they don't get the attention of the point scorers and all that because they don't have that purpose. They're not like Cabernets or Zinfandels or something like that. Well, I think there's whiskeys that they're also sort of a middle of the road whiskey. We might consider them entry level. And so we'd say, oh yeah, that's more of an entry level whiskey. Someone to introduce to someone to peat. But I think there are times and occasions in which that's what you want in a whiskey. You want something that isn't totally in your face. You want something that isn't going to be so big and distracting that's grabbing all your attention because you're doing something else. You're reading a book, you're watching television, you're interacting with people, whatever else. Something that doesn't, I need another drop of water, or I need another drop of water, or you don't have to mess with it. It's ready to go. Just pour it into the whiskey. And yet it has some characteristics that sort of scratch and itch what you might be looking for. But I think there are also some people and personalities that's what they go for. Cabernet Sauvignon, big, bold, tannin, black currants, cassis. Maybe if it's from Napa Valley, got a lot of oak. It's richer. There's some people that they're not a big Cabernet person. They like Merlot. Merlot ripens a little earlier. It's more of the red fruit notes. Probably don't get as much new oak. I know I'm talking a lot about wines, but it'll pair with the same foods as a Cabernet Sauvignon, but it's not so much in your face. Softer tannins. In fact, a lot of Cabernets, they blend in a little Merlot to tame back the tannins. And so there are some people who are more Merlot people than Cabernet Sauvignon people. Or if you talk about Bordeaux, there are more of the right bank of Bordeaux, Semillon, Pomerol, than they are of the left bank of Bordeaux of the Medoc or the hot Medoc region of Bordeaux. I know I'm talking about wines, but it's a similar thing in approaching whiskeys that I think there's some people, you know what? They're not into the big smack and the big powerful, cast strength, whatever. And they're not looking to mess around with the wines. They're looking at something that's ready to drink, that's enjoyable, and has, some differences in it. Just gives them a little waft of smoke. It gives them some fruit. And so in terms of an overall profile of all the different types of whiskeys you could have, there is a place for whiskeys that are sort of in that middle. that in that middle. And there are wines in that same place that are in the middle. And I think that is the charm of Oban, of Oban. So I know sounds like I'm a rep from Oban or an apologist, a defender of Oban. I'm not. I'm just saying there's a place for this style of whiskey. Mm. Mm, 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 mm. Too slow. Thanks for tuning in. So, me in particular, are there times in which I'm in the mood for whiskey like that? I think so. Sometimes I know we like the cask strength whiskeys, and I have lots of cask strength whiskeys, especially during the middle of the week. Sometimes I know if I have a cask strength whiskey, even if I add water to it, even if I put on ice, the next morning I am not at my best. I'm not talking about that I got hammered. I'm just saying it takes a lot out of you. So sometimes in the middle of the week, I'm reading that I just don't want something that big. I want something a little bit more moderate. I like something in the 46 range. 46 is my sweet spot. That's more of my middle of the week, range of whiskeys. And if I'm gonna have a big ABV or something like that, I'm probably gonna want to more like hold it off till the weekend. So dried stone fruit, little sweetness up front. The finish is moderate to short. It has an integrated peaty character. Slight nuttiness, a little bit of caramel, a little bit of chocolate. It has a little bit of quince, a grilled quince or glazed quince character. I think I talked about this in my video. Quince looks like a pear, but it's harder than a pear. So typically you don't eat quince raw. You're gonna want to cook it, and they typically put a glaze on it, and they might put something like star anise or anise on it to spice it up a little bit. And I've had it as a dessert at some of your frou-frou restaurants, your Michelin star restaurants. If you see on the dessert, cart some glazed quince, try it out. News now, Adrian Rock's redo. I agree with your comments on Oban. It's a nice light sip. Yeah, exactly. And I think we have to be context. We have to be open-minded enough to realize, there are different times and different places for different foods, for different wines, for different music. I'm probably one of the most eclectic people I know in terms of food, music, wine, whiskey, movies, and everything else. Here's my iPhone. I've got everything on here from Pavarotti to Motorhead. I have Celine Dion. I have John Denver. I have Natalie Merchant. I have Josh Groban. I have Johnny Cash. I have Johnny Cash, right? So it's always going to be, I have some classical music, Mozart, Beethoven, Bach, Vivaldi. I'm a big fan of Vivaldi. And so what's going to determine what I'm going to listen to is going to depend on what I'm doing. There's some music while listening to it, it may cause you to get a speeding ticket, right? That really hard, fast going music, it makes you want to, step on the gas and go faster. There's some, it's more of a chill out music, as you're going through the nice drive in the countryside. But if you're really, really, really tired, you don't want to listen to that music because you're going to fall asleep behind the wheel. But if you're enjoying a nice countryside drive, that's a good time for that kind of music. If you're tired, it's been a long day at work, I tend to listen to something a little bit more energetic, and I like hard rock and roll metal on my way home from work in the morning, because it's going to be a long, probably stressful day at work. I'm a little bit more in the middle, a little bit moderate. I can't listen to I can't listen to political radio in the morning on the way to work because then I'm already pissed off by the time I get to work. Well, it's the same thing with whiskeys and wines and movies. It's all about mood, setting, and everything else. But I think also, if you're going to entertain, you have people over. If I wasn't a whiskey tuber, I have 340 odd bottles of whiskey. If I wasn't a whiskey tuber, I wouldn't have this many whiskeys. I would probably have 10 to 20 at the most. But I would want whiskeys of various types, various styles from very different countries to sort of fill. So I'd have a couple peated whiskeys, a couple sherry cask whiskeys, a couple bourbons, a couple of different ABV levels, But I would have something closer to 10 to 20. I wouldn't have 340 whatever bottles I've got here. This is ridiculous. But I would want different styles and different profiles. So if someone's coming over and they want to try a whiskey, I would have something that hopefully would be suitable for them. All right. So score-wise, I know everybody has their different scores. My scoring is, first, is it a sound whiskey? By that, it doesn't have any technical flaws. Technical flaw, which means it's something went wrong, bad cork, or wasn't produced right, that they went too far into the tails. Something's bad about it. If it's a sound whiskey or wine, that gets me to at least 80 points. If it has 3 characteristics or more, 3 flavors or more, aromas or more, should get me at least about 80, 85. Everything from 85 on, it's going to do, that's where the development starts affecting the score. Is it different from the front and the middle into the finish? And you hear me say this in my videos all the time. And then secondly, length of finish. And then how many individual little components do you get? The complexity of it. And it's going to be really that length of finish and the complexity and the wow factor of a whiskey that's going to get me up over 90 points. And that's the reason why the cigar blend, when I reviewed it 2 years ago, it was my whiskey of the year at 95 points, right? Because it's just, it's just a phenomenal whiskey. When I start using words like it has grace and finesse and elegance and it's layered and it's complex, I'm going waxing on and on about it. It's going to be up there. So the 14-year-old, it has at least 4 different characteristics. It's a sound whiskey. It's a well-made whiskey. The little bit of peat gives it some interest. And so it's going to, for me, it's going to be between 85 and 90. I don't remember what my original score was. I will probably go in between 85 and 90, which means I'm going to give it probably 86, 87 in that range. In order to go up over 90, it would need more layers of complexity, and it would need a longer finish. And what would it take to get it there? It would probably need more age, perhaps better casks, and they would probably need to not non-chill filtered. Even if it tasted blind, and I don't know it's non-chill filtered, if they quit chill filtering it, they would have more. It would have a better mouthfeel. That's another thing, texture and mouthfeel to it. I don't hear a lot of whiskey tubers talk about mouthfeel. I like having a sort of a coating mouthfeel, which adds to the length of the profile of a whiskey, because if it's sort of coating your mouth, it's going to make the whiskey stay around longer. There's a sensuousness you can have in a whiskey. This is pretty much just straight down the middle of the road of the palate, and it doesn't have sort of echoing effect in my mouth as a palate. So those are those areas in which it's going to come up short. But still, general overall, it's a halfway decent whiskey. All right. So by the way, we do have a quiz tonight. I have 5 questions on Oban Distillery, so we are going to get to those. But let me jump into a little bit to the 18-year-old. And I think the price difference between if you're here in the United States, between the 14 and 18-year-old, is it worth spending the extra bucks on the 18-year-old? That's probably the question. There is another whiskey that they have. It's a non-age statement called Little Bay. I haven't seen that one on a shelf in a while. I'm assuming they're still making it. I've never tried it, and it's probably the least expensive of all of them, but probably also the least impressive. All right. So this is the 18-year-old. Right out, the 18-year-old has more chocolate character than the 14-year-old. Even if though it's the same ABV, I can tell there's a slightly more intensity of flavor aromas. It's more spicy. It smells darker, smells richer, but similar characteristics, just cranked up just a notch. So you can have more intense flavor without necessarily having more alcohol. Age will provide that. Better casks will provide that. So having more intense and more complexity and layers of flavor isn't just about having more ABV, although higher ABV will give it more oomph behind the aromas and flavors to give you that. It's about quality of casks and whether or not you show filtering. Matthew Renke, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, thanks for tuning in. He says, I'm really into mouthfeel. I should just go show it. I'm really into mouthfeel. It's right behind taste for helping me like a bottle. Exactly. Exactly. And funny, the weird thing is, I watch a lot of whiskey tubers, and a lot of them don't talk about it. They tend to just focus on aromas and flavors, and then give a score. And I don't hear whiskey tuber. I'm not saying. I would say this to encourage whiskey tubers to give some thought. Explain why you give your scores, the scores that you give them. I know we score things differently. Justify the scores and explain why it is you approach things. The 18-year-old doesn't have that marzipan character. It doesn't have the glazed quince. It is darker. It is richer. It has more chocolate notes. Not quite coffee, maybe more of a toffee note. It is darker. The peat, it isn't more in your face in terms of the intensity of the peat, but it does seem darker and richer. And so the length of finish, maybe a minuscule bit more. I would say it has more depth. It has a little bit more complexity to it. It's richer. It's darker. I'm still tasting it now, which tells you something. It's got a longer finish. I'm getting a little bit of dried black fruit notes. I'm getting a little bit, and we're talking a little bit of anise, black licorice. I mean, just a little bit. I know a lot of people, it's not like black licorice, like, like a rye. It's not like that kind of intense whiskey, but there's just a little bit of it. So I remember when I reviewed the 18-year-old, I wasn't real thrilled with it. It wasn't a bad whiskey. I just found it less than impressive for something that's an 18-year-old. And I would say if you were to take a whole bunch of 18-year-olds or 17-year-olds or 19-year-olds, somewhere in that close range, this probably would have challenge competing against other distilleries and other 18-year-olds. That being said, I like it more than the 14-year-old. But you're probably going to pay you're definitely going to pay the difference. I don't remember how much these are, and I can look them up. But anyway, a lot of tubers mention it's a bit thin, right? So which is kind of a way of describing mouthfeel. That 43% is good, but could be better, and move on. Not much at all, if anything, about the mouthfeel. Yeah, but that is sort of an indication what they're talking about. So alcohol does several things. Alcohol carries aromas and flavors. It gives a lot more oomph. Alcohol can actually provide a little sweetness to it. A lot of people don't know that. And I only know that because while studying wine in a class, we had glasses of water, and each water incrementally had a little bit more alcohol in it, added to it. And the purpose of it was just so that you could perceive how alcohol in wine, but in water, add a little sweetness to it. So alcohol can add a little sweetness to it. Alcohol can give mouthfeel to it. It can give body. It can give a weight to it. It's not just about intoxication. I'm not actually not into getting hammered. I'm not into getting drunk. I'm not in getting plastered. No, I don't like that. Um, I've had people ask if the whiskey or wine tasted and smelled the same, but didn't have alcohol in it, would you like it as much? And someone who asks a question like that doesn't understand. Basically, I would say that if you're asking me if you couldn't get drunk off it, would you like it as much? That's a whole different thing than having alcohol. What it has alcohol in it. To have something of this flavor and so forth, and say, but it didn't have alcohol, is to misunderstand what's bringing or delivering or carrying the flavor. If you're saying if it tasted the same, smelled the same, but you didn't get drunk off of it, would you like it as much? My answer would be yes. In fact, this past week I had some smoked salmon. Love smoked salmon with a Pinot Noir from Williams-Salem. The bottle cost me probably 140 bucks. Real high-end wine. It's a 2011 Williams-Salem. It's been sitting in my cellar for years and years and years. Just hadn't gotten around to having it. I mean, it's just a phenomenal wine. Phenomenal wine. I didn't get drunk off it. I had some smoked salmon. What I like to do, the way I like to do smoked salmon, and then I toast an onion bagel. This is gonna sound funny. Toast an onion bagel. I put a thin layer of cream cheese on the onion bagel, and then on top of that, I put the smoked salmon, and then I have my Pinot Noir. Whether it's grilled salmon, smoked salmon, I like grilled salmon with the skin on it. It's my all-time favorite pairing. I love Pinot Noir and smoked salmon, and that's kind of like how I like to eat it. Or if I go to a real nice restaurant and they have grilled salmon or smoked salmon, some sort of grain, side to it, vegetables or whatever, and have that grilled salmon. Man, it's just absolutely phenomenal with Pinot Noir. Anyway, I didn't get drunk at dinner time having smoked salmon with my Pinot Noir. I had 2 glasses of Pinot Noir. I didn't get drunk or anything like that. But to talk about would you like it as much if it didn't have the alcohol in it is to not understand physically what is delivering the flavor. But if you're asking me if you didn't get drunk, would you like it as much? If you didn't get the buzz, and I would say yes. In fact, I would say most of the time, I would say 95 to 99%, I'm not drinking to the point of getting a buzz. Typically, this is me. I pour that much, and that's it. I go to the living room, turn a light, grab a book, and read a book for an hour and go through. It'll take me an hour to get through that much. Spend an hour reading a book and just drinking that much, or watching a television program or a movie or whatever. You're not getting drunk off of this in an hour. If you slammed it, kabam, maybe you would, but you're not drinking over an hour. Jack the Pickled Hound, how you doing, man? David says Little Bay is $68. Everything is up if you can find it. I remember seeing it was probably like 45 bucks the last time I saw it. Everything is just skyrocketed, and everybody complains about the prices, but it's not just a matter of the prices going up and availability. It's the economic situation we're on due to the current, at least at part, due to the current administration's fumblings of things. All right, but I'm not going to get political. All right, let's do a quiz. I've been talking about 40 minutes. Let's do our quiz. Only 5 questions, and then we'll get back into enjoying the whiskeys, and I'll get into the Distiller's Edition. All right, so if you didn't see before, all these questions, the information in it is covered in the video. One thing I kind of goofed on the slides, I usually question number 1 and answers A, B, C, and D. I forgot these are all numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4 in terms of the answers, but that doesn't matter. All righty, first question. And I don't think when a distillery changes hands 20 times over 100 years, who's going to remember every owner? You're not. I think you should know if you can, where it's located, what does the name of the distillery mean, who founded it, who are the current owners. You should probably know something, anything that's distinctive about its production, that kind of thing. All right, so there we go. Excuse me. The name Oban means by this. Excuse me. One. I already said A already. One, by the seashore. Two, little bay. Three, smoky. Or four, peaceful. What is the answer? Is it by the seashore, little bay, smoky, or peaceful? The purpose of my quizzes isn't to stump you. It isn't to give you super difficult questions. It should just reinforce what we've already covered in the video and already learned. Taylor Ashley says 2B. Yeah, it's a correct the numbering of the answers. All right. And the answer is Little Bay. In fact, they have a whiskey. We were just talking about that, named after Little Bay. So if you saw in the video, if you look at it, Oban is on the west coast of the mainland of Scotland. When I went to Oban, it was part of our route to Islay. So my first trip to Scotland in 2018, part of the trip was part of a tour group. The rest of it, I was driving on my own up in the Highlands and Speyside. So met with a tour group in Edinburgh, and we drove to Deanston. Then we went up and over and went to Oban on the coast, and then we drove down the coast, and then we caught our ferry, and the ferry took us over to Islay. And we made stops here and there to see some scenic sites along the way. So the Oban is in the town of Oban, and it's sort of like they started the distillery. There wasn't much of a town there. It's really a fishing town. And then the town sort of grew up around it. They built around it. And the result is it's pretty much hedged in there. So the only way they can expand is if they built another facility somewhere else. If you look at pictures of Oban, particularly taken, say, from the docks, there is like this, looks like a Roman Colosseum up in the hills above Oban. Do a little reading on research on that. It's kind of interesting. I guess a particular family, they had some money. They want to build some sort of monument, family monument up on the hill. So they went grandeur and they built this big ass, it looks like a Colosseum kind of a thing. And it didn't really sort of get finished. You know, it didn't really finish the project and whatever. I think some family members might be buried there or something. Then it got finished later on, and then it turned into what it is today. Basically sort of an outdoor architecture, artsy-fartsy thing. It didn't turn into the grand monument I think they originally planned it to be. But anyway, kind of interesting. Up above the hill, up above Oban, up in the hills, this big-ass monument. All right, next question. Question number 2. In 1793, probably one of the most difficult things about studying distilleries is trying to remember all the dates. In 1793, the Stevenson brothers, so they're the ones that started the distillery, the Stevenson brothers, started Oban Distillery as a what? So what was Oban Distillery? Was originally A, a winery, 2, a brewery, 3, a fishery, or 4, a mill? What originally was Oban Distillery? David Belcher says 2. Too Slow says 2. Matthew says 2. Everybody's saying brewery. It's interesting. A lot of distilleries were originally breweries, and that is the correct answer. The answer is 2, a brewery. So it kind of makes sense because before you make a whiskey, you got to make a beer. So take a beer mash, distill it, and then that's where you get your whiskey from. So it kind of makes sense. And there are a number of distilleries that their history, including say like Glenmorangie, they actually started off as a brewery. You got a snowball's chance in hell of having a winery in Scotland. It's too damn cold. They don't have the right soil. you wouldn't get the grapes to be ripe. I imagine somebody's making wine, but it's too damn cold up there. And you're not going to get a winery up there. But a fishery would make sense because they're right there on the coast. They're right there in a little bay. So probably the second closest answer possibilities it would have been, I'd say, a fishery. Just taking out a sip. All righty. Number 3. Before being sold to the Distillers Limited Company, DCL, Oban was owned by 1. Pernod Ricard, 2. LVMH, that's Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, also known as Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton. The Dramanator says, Eric, how's the headquarters, Buddy Bay? It's fantastic. I love Half Moon Bay. I'll talk more about that in a minute. 3. William Grant, or 4. John Dewar's, should be plural, John Dewar and Sons. So is it Pernod Ricard, LVMH, William Grant, or John Dewar and Sons? John Dewar and Sons. Grumpy Old Fart says all of them. No, that would be incorrect. Grumpy Old Fart. Sorry, you got that one wrong. I could have put 5, all the above, but nope. Alrighty, so most people are saying 4, and the answer is John Dewar's and Sons. John Dewar's and Sons. That is correct. That is correct. So, as I said at the beginning of the live stream, I'm loving it here. You know, right now you hear there's these massive heat waves. Oh, global warming, all this heat. Oh, the heat waves in the middle of the country. Oh, shut the fuck up. Seriously. It's summertime. This happens every year. They have massive amounts of heat. Every year. This is what it's like. It's been like this for 100 plus years. Okay, I'm sorry. It's always been like that. You got hotter years and more cooler years, but it's freaking summertime. Guess what? A few months, it's going to cool off. It's called fall and then winter. Sorry, it's just the way it is. I love it here. As I was saying before, the climate here is very similar to Isla. Very, very cool. Free air conditioning. I don't even know if this house has air conditioning. So, by the way, I moved into the house I live in. It's somewhat on a hill, and there's 4 levels to it. The first level is a garage, and then the next level is the living room, and that's where the front door in the living room. The next level is the dining room. So the dining room right there, and I have a large table right there. What I'm in right now is a huge kitchen. There's a kitchen here, and right now this here would be a second dining room, and then there's a third kitchen. There's like a kitchenette, like a breakfast kitchenette, kitchen nook, a breakfast nook over there. But of course, I turned this into my whiskey area. So it's a very large kitchen. There's a deck here. Then you go up another level, and then there's the master bedroom, and then there's 2 bedrooms back there, and there's decks out on that level too. And from the master bedroom side, I look at off the deck, and I can see the ocean out there. There's a building somewhat in front of me and some trees, but I can see the ocean around it. Anyway, love it here. I can breathe better here. The climate's better here. It's nice and cool here. Just absolutely love it. I don't like super hot temperatures. So I posted a picture. It's currently now, hold on, watch this. What's the temperature in Austin, Texas?
It's about 95 degrees in Austin, Texas.
All right. What's the temperature in Half Moon Bay?
It's currently 57 degrees in Half Moon Bay.
A 40-degree difference between Austin, Texas, where Daniel Weddington's at, and all those guys, and Half Moon Bay. And I've been, keeping track of tracking the temperatures between here and Scotland. It's very, very similar to Scotland temperature. Really, really, really nice. We do get a little bit of humidity, but because it's a cool humidity, it's not that bad. If you get a slight breeze, you don't even notice it. Hold on. What's the humidity in Half Moon Bay?
The humidity in Half Moon Bay is currently 92%.
92%. The other day was 98%. That's a high humidity, but you don't feel it because it's so cool. So I don't mind. It can steam up the windows a little bit from the humidity. Um, those things, but whatever. I love the climate here. All right, next question. I'm very happy to be here. There are 29 stairs from the garage to the bedrooms. So this is not a place for people who are wheelchair bound or have crutches or whatever, or cane, older people. And you're gonna, without even going to the gym, you're gonna get your steps in just going up and down the stairs, which is probably good for me. All right, next banner. Let's see here. Did we do that one? Yep, we did that one. All right. Oban Distillery is currently owned by, hold on, I got to turn off. I got to remove that. All right. Oban Distillery is currently owned by Edrington Spirits Company, 2, Diagio, 3, United Distillers and Vintners, or 4, LVMH. And Matthew says 2. Taylor says 2. David Belcher says 2. Jack the Pickled Hound says number 2. I know some people don't like Diageo for whatever reason. News Now says 2. And I know that was a softball question. The answer is 2. So, aficionados of wine, aficionados of whiskey, whatever else, we're going to be more geared towards the small producer, craft beer, craft wine, craft whiskey. Because when you're smaller, the focus generally is going to be on quality over quantity because you can't produce high quantity. You're a small craft brewer, distillery, winery, whatever else. So which generally then leads us to like them more. But then we're going to bitch, moan, groan, and complain when they cost more. We're going to bitch, moan, groan, and complain because they're not available. And I see this all the time. I can't get that here. Well, I can't get that here. Why are you reviewing a whiskey that I can't get here in Nova Scotia or in bumfucked Egypt? If the producer increased quantity in order to have enough to get it spread out all over the world, you tend to have challenges on quality. You are less selective in your grapes, in your cask. Because you have to meet that production level. You can be. I had Daniel Whittington on, and he talked about a restaurant, a hamburger store, and a restaurant, and I think it was might have been like San Luis Obispo. I can't remember, somewhere on the coast of California, and there was a small little hamburger place that had better beef, higher quality of beef than the steakhouse. Why? Because in order to meet their demands, they don't need as much. Because they don't need as much, because it's a smaller quantity, they can go higher quality. So there's a pyramid scheme. There's a pyramid, not scheme. There's a pyramid in what's available in quality. And when you're going to have to meet a demand that's global, you're going to have enough casks, enough grain, enough everything else to meet the quantity to be globally available. And that's why blended whiskeys make up 90% of Scotch production, because they're meeting the mass. You don't hear about craft blended whiskeys so much because they're meeting the bigger demand market, and they're geared more towards cocktails, generally speaking. Anyway, so Diageo, a big ass company, another sip of the 18-year-old. Big ass company with a global reach They can own a distillery like, oh, say Lagavulin, and have some special bottlings that are available distillery only that everybody's going to be after. But generally, they're going to have to produce at the level that they can have a global reach. It's just the nature of the business. So you're either bitch about the unavailability, or you're going to bitch about the quality. And the producers of the whiskey are going to try to find a middle road to do the best whiskey that they can provide at that quantity level. And this is why some smaller producers, when they get bought out by a big conglomerate company, sometimes the quality will go down, not always, because that big company is now going to try to spread that whiskey or wine or beer or beef or whatever the product is thinner to get to reach a bigger market. And so they're going to change the profile of the product. And you can we're all going to complain, oh, when they were independently owned and we didn't sell out to the big brand companies, they were so much better. That's right, because the big brand company is now trying to reach a larger market. That's just the way it is. All righty, I'm going to move on to the third one before we get to our last question. This is the 2016 Distillers Edition. I'm kind of curious. I'm going to see what this one goes for. I think if more people, more consumers had a better understanding of the business side of whiskey, and the business side of whiskey is the less sexy side. We focus on aromas and flavors. I mean, that's because that's what we're as the consumer. If we had more understanding of history and of the business side and marketing side, we would understand why things are the way they are. All right, I'm going to do a quick search on an Oban Distillers Edition. So this is an older bottling, about a couple years ago. So at K&L, by the way, so here in California, there's 3 stores called K&L. There's one in San Francisco, one in Redwood City, which is also in the Bay Area, and one in Los Angeles. If you live in the Bay Area or in Los Angeles, check out K&L. They are fantastic in service. I mean, and service to me is everything. Also, I would say the wines, they tend to focus more on Bordeaux than other regions, although they have other regions as well. Great carriers of bourbon. They also have a lot of where they buy casks, a lot of independent bottlings at their place. So if you're in California and they do ship, K&L is just top notch. All right. Anyway, so the Oban Distillers Edition is 140 at K&L. Of course, it's probably a different version. Let me see what version they got. Different year. Oh, that's a Montefino. I think the casks may also change. Let me try this one. See what this one is. 2016. Okay, I'm looking on Wine Searcher. By the way, if you're looking for wines or whiskeys, Wine Searcher is a search engine, not just for wines, but also for whiskeys. So it's called Wine Searcher. If there's you can pay some sort of service to get more notifications or more than just what you're generally looking for, but I don't do that. So in the Netherlands, $75. In Switzerland, 85. Of course, I don't. In Belgium, 95. In the 110. That can't be right. Really? I'm just checking prices here real quick. It doesn't, it's not showing available in the United States. I bought it over at the distillery. So it may take a little bit more hunting. I don't remember what I paid for it. So let's just see what the 2021. Of course, I think the casting would be different. So the 2021, what's the price on this freaking thing? It was $100. So the 2021 was $100. Ex Bodega Montilla Fino cask. Okay, so which is like a Fino sherry cask. All right. Anyway, so it was like $100. So the casking can change for the distiller's edition. So this is 2016. So the 2021 is going to be different. Anyhow, but I already know, and I'll smell and taste it now. So David Belcher says the current version is 105 in Oregon. Seen it on the shelves though. Yeah, K&L, great independent bottles for a variety of good prices. Definitely, I bought a couple into indies there. In fact, I have a Bowmore indie that I bought there, an old particular Bowmore that I bought there. I know I've got another one, but anyway. So Donna Pass is a California native. So, all right. It's richer. It's more complex. It's more sherried. It's got almonds going on in there. Golden raisins, sultanas, caramel, a little bit of that chocolate character to there in there. It has a slight pipe tobacco, like a sweeter tobacco. I don't smoke. My dad smoked a pipe, and I remember smelling pipe tobacco. He'd have in these little pouches and being like that. Little vanilla. It's got a nice ginger spice on there. So it already has more notes in terms of aromas and flavors than the other two whiskeys. It's got a longer finish. So it's not a big kapow in terms of intensity and flavor, but in terms of the layers of flavor and the complexity. Overall, I would say it's pretty much the same up front, in the middle, and into the finish. So it doesn't necessarily have a lot of variety in terms of transitions. I like transitions. I like a ride or an experience in aromas and flavors as you go through a wine or whiskey. I like changes throughout it. It's pretty much the same all the way through. So, it didn't quite have enough to get me over the 90-point score, but definitely more than the other two. So I'm probably in the 88 to 89 point range. If it had 46%, a little bit more oomph, and a little bit more depth, and mouthfeel. We were talking about this earlier. It doesn't quite have the mouthfeel, I would say, of a higher end whiskey. And when you're chill filtering your whiskey, you're just not going to have those characteristics. I'm sorry. Nevertheless, I think it's a great whiskey, and anybody, I think, would be happy to be given a bottle. All right, so let's get into our last question. I think this is our last. Yep. Oban Distillery is the blank distillery owned by Diagio. 1, the smallest. 2, the second smallest. 3, the most productive. Or 4, the oldest. So which is it? Is Oban the smallest, the second smallest, the most productive, or the oldest? David Belcher and Matthew say 2. So they're both saying it's the second smallest. I'm taking another sip here. David Belcher is saying 2. I'm not getting any more answers here. And the answer is, Grumpy Old Fart says 2 stills. That is true. They have 2 stills. There you go. That gives you a clue. It can't be the most productive because they only have 2 stills. As I said earlier, they're wedged into the town built up around them. They can't expand. That would inhibit size and production, which takes you, so it's either the smallest, second smallest, or potentially the oldest. I didn't mention in this video when the distillery was built, but here is the answer. The answer is the second smallest, the second smallest. Okay, so for extra points, because we all know we're keeping score, what is the oldest distillery owned by Diagio? I didn't say Scotch distillery, I said distillery. On record, what is supposedly the oldest distillery owned by Diagio? You get extra points. You become the teacher's favorite. If you tell me the oldest distillery. Also, second question, what is the smallest distillery owned by Diageo? Do you know what is the oldest? Excuse me. What is this? If Oban is the second smallest, what is the smallest distillery? I'm not seeing any answers come up. If I know some whiskey tubers give away free whiskeys and stuff. I don't have a problem giving away whiskey. If anybody came over, in fact, I'm probably going to have an open house in the near future. It's a pain in the ass to go to the post office or a FedEx or whatever else, and the packaging and the wrapping and all that crap. That is the only reason why I don't send out whiskeys. Matthew, ding, 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 ding. Royal Lochnagar. Of course, if you Googled it, that's the answer. Yeah, Royal Lochnagar is the smallest. Royal Lochnagar is the smallest. What is the oldest? That is the smallest. The oldest is actually an Irish distillery. Right? Oh, excuse me. Here, the oldest distillery owned by Diageo is Bushmills. That's right. That's right. Bushmills. It is Bushmills. This is a 16-year-old. I will be reviewing this soon when I cover Irish distilleries. Again, part of the series, I will cover a couple Irish distilleries. In fact, after this, we'll be doing a couple distilleries from. Actually, next distillery will be Auchentoshan. So next week we'll be looking at Auchentoshan, and then from there we go into Islay. I think we do Bowmore. I think we do Ardbeg, and it might be Bruichladdich. We don't do all the for the exam. We don't do all the Islay distilleries. I think we just do 3. So I have a Bowmore Aston Martin that I'll be doing. Looking forward to getting into that. So, alrighty. So later this week there'll be a video out on Auchentoshan Distillery, and then we'll be covering Auchentoshan next week. Alrighty. So we'll be going on for an hour and 10 minutes. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. He says, I had the Bushmills original bottle, white label, and the 10-year-old. Interesting. All right, so I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If you're watching on the replay, if you have any comments and questions, leave them down below. Overall, I like Oban. It's not my favorite. It's never going to be my favorite. It's not my least favorite either. It's just sort of right there in the middle of the road, and I think that's the way the whiskeys are. All righty, so if you're watching on the replay, after about 24 hours after this video has been processed, I'm going to put links here and over 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 here to other videos to watch, part of this series. If you're ever out here in California and you intend on visiting the San Francisco Bay Area and you want to drop over for a dram, give me some advance notice. Send me an email. Let me know you're coming. I would be more than happy to have you over. I am planning maybe in September, maybe the weekend before the Bachelor's Ball. The Bachelor's Ball is going to be on September 10th in Austin, Texas, Saturday, September 10th. I will be there. So if you're going to be at the Bachelor's Ball, I will be there. Hope to see you there. And hey, Michael Gonzalez, thanks for tuning in. All right, until next time, Slanjiva and cheers.